In fact, I don't even like to say the word vulnerability.
I can
or
tell.
Vulnerable. Yeah, I don't like it. And in fact, I believe that in modern day society, for males in particular, we've placed too much emphasis in that arena. But I do have to say that I have learned the hard way that bottling things up over a period of time will not result in healthy handling of events. You can keep filling up your bucket, but at some point your bucket is going to run over. In 2007, I came literally within seconds of taking my own life. And that's when I realized I'm in trouble. I am in big trouble. I believe, and I don't mean to offend anybody, but if people get offended, so be it. I believe that suicide is the last great act of selfishness. I believe there is no, because what you do is you take all your troubles and then you plant them on the people you leave behind. I don't know, I mean, I've come from a world, law enforcement and the military, where people take their own lives. I've lost a number of good friends, soldiers, law enforcement officers who've taken their own lives. And the devastation on their spouses and more importantly, the devastation on their children. And some never recover from that simple act. You may think you're solving your problems. You're not solving your problems at all. You're definitely not dealing with your problems. You're transferring them to the people who are left behind. And it's an incredibly selfish act. And it is not okay. And there's no heroism in it, right? There's no honor in it. And we've got to get out of the idea for military and first responders that there's any honor in this act. Taking that first step is the hardest step of all.
Yeah.
When I finally called somebody to get counseling, that was an extremely hard thing for me. To admit that I was vulnerable and that I needed to talk to somebody, to admit to them that I needed help and I needed them to help me.
Yeah.
That was a big step.
Yeah.
But you know what? Once you've made that first step, the next step, they get easier and easier and easier.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Defenders Live. I'm your host, Lora Thorson. Randy Watt is a retired chief of police and a retired colonel in the U.S. Army National Guard Special Forces with over 36 years of service in law enforcement and 34 years of military service, including 3 combat tours. During those tours, he led counterterrorism missions in Iraq and Afghanistan. He's trained thousands of officers and civilians and helped overturn landmark firearms legislation with expert testimony. A rangemaster at Gunsight Academy and the author of One Warrior's Creed, Randy now leads SRW Incorporated and the Power of Awareness Institute, where he equips ordinary citizens to live prepared, honorable lives with clarity, courage, and conviction. So excited to have Randy Watt back on Defenders Live. Hi, Randy.
How are you, Laura?
I'm great. Thank you so much for coming back on the show.
No, absolutely.
Well, I was talking to you before the show, and I just want to say that I have such a deep respect and admiration for you for so many reasons. Before we get started, make sure you're subscribed, whether you're watching on Rumble or YouTube or listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere else you find this show. If you don't want to miss another episode, head to defenders-live.com and become a free subscriber. That way, every new episode gets delivered straight to your inbox. And if you're looking for top-tier firearms and self-defense training, go to defenders-usa.com and check the calendar to see what's coming to your area this year. And one of the reasons is because the last time you were on the show, you opened up to me in a way that I didn't expect. Mm-hmm. And because of who you are and all of the experience that you have in your career, I was really surprised by that, honestly. And so this time around, I want to make sure that we don't waste any time, that we get right to it. And some of the questions I have for you might not be questions that the audience would expect. Sure. But I'm going to do it anyway and be brave. So I want to lead off. So part of this interview is going to be talking about the Power of Awareness Institute. And the reason for that is because I deeply believe in what you and Dan Schilling are doing. What you're doing is, I believe, equipping people for everything that doesn't have to do with the gun. And from my experience and my belief is that the gun is just a very small part of the equation that gets a very large percentage of the attention because it's fun to train and it's fun to shoot guns. But there's this whole portion that I think doesn't get talked about enough, which the Power of Awareness Institute addresses in what it really means to become a protector of life. And so instead of talking about the tools today, I would like to talk about some of the other things that maybe are left out of the equation, because the most capable protectors that I know are, and this is going to sound funny to some people probably, but the ones that I know that are actually the most capable don't just have the tools and the skill set and the technique, but they are deeply self-aware people. They're very emotionally stable people, and usually they're very spiritually grounded people. And so in your experience, what are those invisible disciplines that make someone truly capable of being a protector?
Yeah. It's funny because my wife refers to me, well, the group, because she's met so many over the years. We've been married 45 years, and she's lived through both of my careers. She calls us the most dangerous nice guys you'll ever meet. Yeah. But keep in mind, she's met and she knows Delta operators, Team 6 guys from my generation, of Team 6, other SEALs, a lot of Special Forces people, Air Force combat controllers. She's a big fan of Dan Schilling. Dan and I have known each other and worked together since 1997 in the special operations community. And then, of course, as you've seen us with the power of awareness. So if there were a signature attribute in that formula, it would be the word you already mentioned, and that is discipline. We lead very disciplined lives. I believe that discipline is the most important attribute for success, and it's the attribute from which all other attributes stem. If I want to be successful in any endeavor, I have to be disciplined enough to put in the work. I have to be disciplined enough to overcome the obstacles. And I'm not just talking physical pain, I'm talking mental pain, spiritual pain. I have to be disciplined. If I want to live life to its fullest, I have to be disciplined in my endeavors. And I believe that is the core attribute that I see in truly successful people, whether it's in the military, law enforcement, whether it's in business, whether it's in particularly in living a Christ-centered life. It requires great discipline. Yeah. And in order to be disciplined, you have to be pretty self-aware. And in order to be self-aware, you have to be pretty disciplined. Those two things go hand in hand. And so we've gotten, as a society, it's too easy to be undisciplined.
Yeah. And when you talk about discipline, I want to just unpack that for a second, because that word is used a lot, especially in our space.
Sure.
What it means to me is doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do, not because necessarily it's what you want to do or feel like doing in the moment. Would that be your definition, or is your definition?
Yeah, that's pretty close.
Yeah.
Discipline is, in my mind, discipline is the ability to do whatever is necessary to succeed. And I could talk about military missions where, in order to accomplish the objective, in those moments in time, having the discipline to lead in the face of great challenge, and in the terms of soldiers, having the discipline to perform while under great stress. And while the mind is telling you this is not a good place to be, we should try to exit this arena. Yeah. But the right thing to do is to carry on and accomplish the objective, regardless of the personal cost.
And that takes great courage.
And I believe that courage stems from discipline.
Yeah. Well, that's good, Randy. Way to lead off. I love it. Sure. I love it. So let's go a little bit further here. So I wanted to tie this into power of awareness. So someone who's never taken the power of awareness course, which by the way is mypoa.org, if you guys want to check that out. What kind of transformation, because I consider it to be a program that can be transformative to the people who really take it seriously. What kind of transformation does it offer, not just in terms of safety, but like how someone can show up differently in their everyday life? Because to me, all these things are tied together. I don't think it's just one independent thing here and here and here. I see it as all tied together as one thing. And sure, you give people tools in that course, But you also provide a lot of context and allow us as students to put ourselves in situations,
Right.
which I think is so valuable.
Yeah. So when you look at what it takes to become aware, self-awareness is focused internally,
Mm-hmm.
right? Situational awareness is focused externally.
Mm-hmm.
So we're reading different things. If we're looking at self-awareness, we're reading our internal drives. We're reading and engaging the introspective parts of our brain, and we're evaluating ourselves in terms of outcomes and what it is we'd like to do. In situational awareness, we're reading the external stimulus, the external environment, and we're making decisions on what our place in that environment is, what those interactions are, and are they safe or unsafe.
Mm-hmm.
When we're training people, and situational awareness is thrown around all the time. You can go on the internet, and there are hundreds, if not thousands, of special ops guys and cops and other people talking about situational awareness or teaching situational awareness in a 3-minute soundbite. That's not situational awareness. Situational awareness requires training the brain and then habituating those neural pathways involved so that we begin to automatically evaluate our surroundings no matter the environment.
Mm.
You may have had it happen to you where you walk into a room or environment or a social event, let's say, and the first thing you do, you're looking for your friend, you go find your friend, and they're talking to your friend, you decide to use the restroom, and you're looking all around going, okay, where's the restroom? And you got to ask them. Whereas people who are situationally aware, when they entered the room, they saw exits, they saw restroom signs, they saw the environment without really consciously doing so.
Mm-hmm.
And then you found your friend, and then you went over, and when you decided you need to utilize the restroom, you turned right and you went to the restroom.
Mm-hmm.
And so understanding how to shape the brain to perform just simple things like that. You walked into a crowded event, and you're looking around, you're talking to people, and you're just surveying the environment, and something suddenly stands out to you.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere along the line, you had picked up some form of cue and stored it in a brain to watch for this. And whatever this is, what it looks like, feels like, and what signals does it send to you, and then evaluating those. In the parlance of situational awareness, we call that an anomaly. We learn to so rapidly assess our environment that the normal doesn't even enter into our thinking.
Yeah.
But when there's a change to the environment, or when something that's anomalous in terms of what we see, it immediately goes from unconscious and subconscious to a conscious, and we focus on it, we evaluate it, and we come up with courses of action if we believe something is necessary. And courses of action run everything from evaluating it fully and dismissing it to evaluating it fully and rapidly and exiting the whole area, leaving the whole event.
Mm-hmm.
But the key is that this is not something you can listen to for 5 minutes and then do. Mm-hmm. Just like anything else that in how we train the brain, it requires education, which expands knowledge, and then it requires training, which is performing. Mm-hmm. In our case, as you know, we give you some practical exercises to perform based on those certain sections of the book to enhance your understanding, but then also to begin programming the brain on how it will think in those environments. And it is transformational, because we hear on a regular basis from people who take the course, do the exercises and so on, that it has made them feel more comfortable and more capable and more confident in a variety of environments. It has also helped them, and this is a big deal, particularly for females, right? It has helped them build the ability to say no, the ability to not be nice when not being nice is the right thing to do, right? I'm always amazed. We hear stories from people, and of course, training thousands around the country in a variety of environments. We hear from people the sentence just before they tell you what bad thing happened, right before you hear, "I knew I shouldn't have," and right there, they just told you their brain.
Or I had a feeling.
Yep.
Yeah.
Their brain said, "This is not good," but they ignored it. They overrode it. And in the case of females, it's almost always because I didn't want to be rude to somebody, right? Or I didn't want to seem like a wench. I just didn't. I didn't want to come across as a complainer. I didn't want to, which is amazing because the light in a public setting like that, and you're approached in a negative standpoint, your approach, probably never going to see that person ever again, and you're worried about being rude. But that's how we have built in our culture. That's how we've kind of built that role.
Yeah.
And in the training we use, and that's the thing. It's probably one of the most common comments we get is, "I feel free now, and it makes good sense to me now, and my brain says it's okay now to say get lost, or leave me alone, or I'm sorry, I'm not giving you directions. I don't want anything to do with you," and walking away. Those things are fine.
Yeah. And for me, I think as I developed more confidence in myself, those things came easier to me and more natural to me. And as I practiced them, I remember the first time that I ever had to call out a command to somebody to stop or back off or whatever that was really difficult for me at first. Sure. And I've noticed that is difficult for a lot of women at first, but it's just like anything else. I think after doing it time and time again, it becomes a lot easier, and I don't feel the same way about it that I used to. And so that's just one small example of just being able to operate in the world with more confidence. And I believe that everyone else around you can read that from you.
Absolutely.
If it's a genuine, authentic confidence and not a fake put on confidence, I think that can be read. And I think that by itself can help keep a person more safe.
And studies have proven that time and time again. There have been myriad studies over 40, 50 years where predators are interviewed and talked to, and they're shown videos, and what do they, in terms of what they look for and those things. And what you said is the thing that comes out of those studies, is that portraying confidence is a huge factor in a predator making a decision as to whether you're a target or not.
Yeah.
And keep in mind the dynamics of predators. If you look like you're confident in your capabilities, you look like you're not going to be easily overwhelmed, you look like you're prepared to fight back, you look them in the eyes, and you're able to read their countenance, you understand what a sneer means, you understand what a raised eyebrow.
And in today's society, just even noticing they exist is a form of confidence, because nobody pays attention to anything anymore.
Right. When I see somebody walking somewhere today in our society, and they don't have their phone out, and they don't have earbuds in their ears, and their head is up, and they're looking at everything around them, and they have a slight smile on their face as they're passing people, they're looking people in the eyes, they're reading their faces in a microsecond. I know I have a trained individual, may very well have an operator.
Yeah, you guys.
It's an anomaly. It's the anomaly in our current society.
Yeah, isn't that so sad?
Yeah.
Ugh. So that just speaks to the fact that this kind of training is even more needed. And so let's give the audience one practical thing. So the power of awareness teaches more than just how to spot a threat. It's about living with more intention. So what is one principle or mindset concept from the course that you think everyone should start practicing today, and that they actually can start practicing today? Is Is it not burying their head in their phones and just paying more attention? Would that be step number one?
That would be number one in my book in
Yeah.
today's environment is remove when you are out in public and you in today's environment, you are always at risk. Now, when I say that, I don't mean that you're always in danger.
Mm-hmm.
What I mean is that you're always at risk. Sometimes that risk is small,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then sometimes, depending on the environment, it's bigger. Small being, I'm walking down the side, and you see these videos. I'm walking down the sidewalk, right, looking at my phone, and I walk into a telephone pole.
Yeah, there are videos of that.
Yeah. Okay, now you have a bruised forehead, right? Or that's what we're talking about. And you're feeling stupid, and you're feeling humiliated, and all of which you deserve if you're walking down the street with your phone in your hand. But you get my point. But if there's another piece of that, it is to be, I'd like to back up a little further, and it's to be, as we talk about in the book, is to be evaluative of your purpose. Where am I going? What am I doing? Is the activity, is it appropriate at this time and in this place? I'm always amazed to some degree, and sometimes it can't be helped, but I'm always amazed at the stories, and a lot of them in my law enforcement career came across my desk or I either investigated them myself or answered the call for service as a patrol officer, or I was a detective and it came across my desk, or I was a supervisor, came across. I'm always amazed at that 11:30 at night, last minute for tomorrow. I've got to do this, and you jump in your car and you run down to the local stop and rob to get whatever it is that you needed, and you find yourself in the middle of an armed robbery, scared to death. One of my good friends years ago got shot in a robbery at close to midnight in a stop and rob in a local convenience store in a part of town that it was nearby. And when I say it was nearby, he was out doing something else and on his way home, and he said, you know what, I need to do this. And the first convenience store that came up, he pulled into it and he got shot. And he survived it, but he didn't. He's just a wonderfully nice guy, just one of those wonderfully good people. And so he's not an operator, he's not a law enforcement guy, he's not a number of things, just a wonderfully nice guy.
Mm-hmm.
And he's still challenged. This happened 25, 30 years ago. That happened, let's see, about 30 years ago. And it still bothers him mentally. I don't see him all the time or really very often, but when I do, almost every time, this comes back into the conversation. He brings it back into the conversation. So he's not settled with it.
Yeah.
Right. So do I need to be doing what I'm doing? Do I need to be what I'm doing where I'm doing it? And do I really expecting to get a proper and satisfactory outcome by doing what I'm doing where I'm doing it? Am I paying attention to the timing, the signaling, and so on?
If you've been listening to Defenders Live and something in you knows it's time to go deeper, not just in your training, but in your life, become a paid subscriber of Defenders Live. Each month, we meet for a live group call, having real conversations about physical growth, emotional discipline, and spiritual strength. You'll be part of a growing community of people just like you, committed to becoming true defenders of life and of their families. This isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up, doing the work, and not doing it alone. So go to defenders-live.com and become a paid subscriber and take your next step toward becoming the kind of defender this world desperately needs. Yeah. Well, let's switch gears here for just a minute. How do I begin this? This is a whole other phase of the interview. So I wanted to switch from power of awareness into some more deep conversation based on where we went last time. I was really surprised during our interview last time that you opened up so much about your faith, and it was really inspiring to me, and I didn't expect it. And ever since then, I find myself thinking about the conversations that we had in that last interview. It still sticks with me to this day, and it's just very powerful to me. And so I want to lead off with something not necessarily down this road of faith, but it's something that's been bothering me a little bit. And I think you could speak to it. And I'm really curious what your perspective is on this, because you have such a broad background of experience with some unbelievable, courageous people that you have led. And I consider you also to be one of those types of people. And I was having a conversation with someone recently, and they have an incredible story. And I wanted them to share their story on my show. And they were okay with sharing the story, but they wanted to make sure that it didn't come across as, number one, being about them. And of course, I want to use all stories as ways to draw out lessons and inspire people. But the other thing I think that they had a different perspective on, this is where I wanted your advice, I guess, is this subject of vulnerability. And I think that to some men, especially, and even to some women, this word is almost a bad word. And I wanted to speak to that because I think that some people think that vulnerability is getting emotional and crying in front of people. And I don't see vulnerability as that at all. I think that it can take that form. But what I believe vulnerability to be is to speak the truth in courage, even when it's hard. That's what I see vulnerability as being. And he gave me this example of a person in his life who in the moment was not being vulnerable in the sense that he was seeing vulnerability. And he spoke about this man who got up in front of a funeral service of his daughter. And he spoke this unbelievable eulogy of her life. And it was very deeply moving and touching. And he said that the entire time that this man, who he considered a man of strength, spoke this eulogy, never shed a tear, never fell apart, and kept it all together. And in that moment, he saw that man as a man of strength and courage because he didn't have vulnerability in that moment. And then later he talked about that same man he happened to see in the bathroom just fell apart afterwards and came to pieces. And so my question is, when you think about strength, especially in a man, do you see that there are times for vulnerability and times when that is not needed? And is that really the true definition of strength?
So I've had some experiences that have taught me that there are times and places and people to be with when you might expose some vulnerability. And that's not inappropriate. And at times it's a very, very good thing. We establish in our mind, particularly if you're in my world that we've talked about, let's just call it the world of violence, and the ability to deliver appropriate violence with an undergirding of morality involved. You're not going to be unaffected. You're going to have contradictive thoughts about the actions you're taking and the things you're doing. And so you're going to need some form of, what should we call it, some cathartic process which allows you to alleviate that stress that's tied to those events. That's not, in my mind, that's not being vulnerable as much as it's being capable of recognizing the impact of these mental stressors, and also recognizing that certain emotional responses are appropriate. It's the way the body is designed and so on. Speaking to an audience and declaring your thoughts and feelings in an environment and then going public and not showing vulnerability, if you will, or weakness in some people's minds, and then going somewhere else and coming apart. That's a pretty reasonable response.
Mm-hmm.
I learned the hard way because my generation of people in the business, we felt that showing emotion at all displayed weakness and displayed vulnerability that are inappropriate in our world.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, I don't even like to say the word vulnerability.
I can
or
tell.
Vulnerable. Yeah, I don't like it. But I also, and in fact, I believe that in modern day society, for males in particular, we've placed too much emphasis in that arena. But I do have to say that I have learned the hard way that bottling things up over a period of time will not result in healthy handling of events, thoughts, and that being able to recognize that communicating the unhealthy thoughts, communicating the weaknesses, communicating the disturbances to someone who can then help you and walk you through them and show you their relevance, that's a big deal. In 2007, I came literally within seconds of taking my own life. And that's when I realized I'm in trouble. I am in big trouble. And so I was driving my vehicle, and my private vehicle, and I was overwhelmed. And I just did not want to be here anymore. And I got caught up in that I believe, and I don't mean to offend anybody, but if people get offended, so be it. I believe that suicide is the last great act of selfishness. I believe there is because what you do is you take all your troubles and then you plant them on the people you leave behind. I don't know. I mean, I've come from a world, law enforcement and the military, where people take their own lives. I've lost a number of good friends, soldiers, law enforcement officers who've taken their own lives. And the devastation on their spouses, and more importantly, the devastation on their children. And some never recover from that simple act. You may think you're solving your problems. You're not solving your problems at all. You're definitely not dealing with your problems. You're transferring them to the people who are left behind. And it's an incredibly selfish act. And it is not okay. And there's no heroism in it, right? There's no honor in it. And we've got to get out of the idea for military and first responders that there's any honor in this act. So here I am in 2007. I'm in my own vehicle, and I get caught up in this mental situation, and I suddenly find myself going over 90 miles an hour looking for something to run into. I've got tears streaming down my face, and the only thing that stopped me, and this again is selfish, the only thing that's sort of selfish, the only thing that stopped me was, with my luck, I'm going to run into a bridge abutment and I'm not going to die. And I'm going to live the life of a quadriplegic or a brain deficient individual who caused his own problem and situation. And then the other part of the less selfish part is, and my wife's going to have to care for me. And I know my wife, she's going to care for me until the day she dies. And I just said, okay. And I, as that realization hit me, I talked myself down off that ledge. I talked myself back away from the edge. And then I said, I need help. The problem was, I didn't stay in the help. I didn't stay long enough to truly deal with what was going on. I treated the symptoms until I felt good. I got counseling from good people, and I treated the symptoms until I felt good. And then I knowingly faked being well.
A lot of guys do that.
Continued on with my life. And then, so that was 2007. In 2021, I began to come apart again. And then I knew, all right, I'm older, I'm wiser, I'm smarter, I've read more, I've become more educated. And so I now have a long-term ongoing treatment package that all of it comes together. And one of the counselors told me, because one of the things that I had begun doing is I had begun walking away from my spiritual self. And one of the counselors said, hey, you got to return to your roots. And one of your roots is your Christian faith. And that's where, and he happens to be Christian as well. He said, look, you're not going to get well mentally, because in your mind is all your faith. In your subconscious and your unconscious is your sense of morality, is your relationship with your Savior, are these things. And that's where you're going to find peace, and that's where you're going to get well. And so I did. I began reading my scriptures again, praying more. I began looking for spiritual solutions to temporal problems. And it's all part of the package. And I will tell you that I'm far wiser and a more healthy and happy individual than I've ever been, even at my age when everything is going downhill. But that's the truth of it. Yeah. So along the way, you could say, I guess it's a long way of answering, along the way, you could say there's vulnerability, but I don't recognize it as such. I believe there are other and better terms than vulnerable.
Yeah, I was just thinking about how I phrased everything that I said leading up to that. And I'm thinking, is that what I really meant?
Yeah, I don't think so.
I don't think so, because I think what I really meant was, to me, strength means facing head on the most uncomfortable things. And that requires vulnerability sometimes.
Sure.
But not always. So I think you're right. I think I used that word incorrectly. And I guess what I was trying to get at is that sometimes, to me, strength looks like facing things and coming apart and being honest with yourself.
I will admit to you that I've cried in combat.
Yeah.
I will admit to you that I've cried or cursed. They're not really opposites. They're both an emotional response to an overwhelming trauma in both of my career fields and things that I've done. Yeah. And I will also tell you,
people that say they don't do vulnerability, that's not what they do, but it's like, you're human. You can't not have emotions and feelings. Or are there people that don't? Aren't those called like psychopaths? I don't know what the clinical term for that is, but
yeah. And that's what gets a lot of people in trouble, is they fight those feelings. When you look at trauma, you look in our fields, you look at that and you look at the people you know, and a number of them, at some point we've all had to come to grips with the body's, the mind's natural response to unnatural events.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The normal response, as Dr. Grossman puts it, the normal response to abnormal mental conditions. Okay. That's where it is. And you can keep filling up your bucket, but at some point your bucket is going to run over. But one thing I want to make clear, I don't care what you've been through. That is not a license to hurt others physically, mentally. There's no license to be abusive. It's not a license to act out. It's not. None of that. So I had an event, PTSD moment, if you will, although I prefer to call it PTSI, post-traumatic stress injury, not a disorder. So I had a PTSI moment, and I blew up at my 19-year-old daughter. I mean, blew up. And walked away. And then now I'm very angry at myself. Right? And my wife, the most wonderful woman God put on this earth, she walked up to me and she didn't attempt to hug me. She didn't talk nice to me. She didn't say, oh, you poor soul, I know what you're going through. She lit into me. about how inappropriate it was. Now you go back in there and you apologize to your daughter. There was no call for what you said. There's no call, no license for how you acted. And she's right.
She was honest with you.
Yeah. So it took me a few minutes to gather myself, but I did. I went back and apologized to my daughter. And my daughter hugged me and said, Dad, I know you've been through a lot of stuff. And I looked at her and I said, that's not an excuse. What I did and said was inexcusable, and I apologize. And people need to, but if you're not, you get the point.
Yeah.
So I don't know if
strength can take different forms. I guess that's my point. I think strength can take different forms at different times, and not everything is appropriate. So there's a time and place for everything. But just being one way and not realizing there's a shadow behind whatever the thing is you're projecting, and not looking at that shadow, I believe is where people get it wrong. And I think lie to themselves and make excuses and act out and find themselves in all kinds of situations that they don't want to be in. So I guess that would
that's and that's, I think that's part of it. I think it takes immense courage to admit when you need help. But that's the first step, right? For anybody struggling with anything. My father was a reformed alcoholic. Taking that first step is the hardest step of all.
Yeah.
When I finally called somebody to get counseling, that was an extremely hard thing for me to admit that I was vulnerable. Is that, I would have to call that, to admit that I was vulnerable and that I needed to talk to somebody, to admit to them that I needed help and I needed them to help me.
Yeah.
That was a big step.
Yeah.
But you know what? Once you're over that once you've made that first step, the next step, they get easier and easier and easier.
Yeah.
And we tend in families and in church congregations, and we tend, sometimes not even realizing it, to enable other people to continue in their inappropriate activities or whatever it is. And we tend to do that out of a number of reasons. But the reality is the number one, you really want to help somebody. No one's going to change until they decide to change. And if you really want to help somebody change, right, then you force them to take the first step.
And be honest with them.
All the time.
Well, okay. That was a big one. So there's another thing that I've been kind of struggling with a little bit lately that I wanted to ask you about and just get your perspective on. I consider you to be a wise man, Randy Watt. And so this is why I'm asking you these things. The struggle has to do with, because I am a woman of strong faith, but I struggle with the knowing the difference of when to let go of something and when to fight. Because I think that this idea of just let go and let God kind of a thing I don't think that is scripturally right. And I've heard that before. And that is not, like, I think there's the joke about if God gives you a shovel, then dig the hole or something like that. But this balance of like knowing when to let go and trust, and knowing when to get in the fight and take action. For me, sometimes I think I still struggle with that. I'm trying to think of a concrete example. I guess the way I could frame it for me personally is in my career right now, I'm trying to figure out the path that he wants me on. And it seems as though he's taking away things on purpose. And I haven't yet seen the fully what is yet to come. So there's a lot of trusting in that whole process. But at the same time, I'm like, are there things I should be doing in the meantime while I'm waiting? Am I not taking enough action? And then I'm wondering, is that just me being a control freak?
Right.
I just struggle with that, because I'm like, is that me or is that him, that drive that I feel like I should keep pushing, keep fighting kind of a thing? And I know that that's really a vague subject to talk about. I don't know if there's anything in your life that you can relate to that, but.
Well, no, I understand.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying. It's like you said, that old adage of you're praying to God for a hole, but then all you do is lean on the shovel.
Right.
No, God wants you to dig.
Yeah.
Another one from my youth is a man falls over a cliff, and it's a long way down, and on the way down he grabs a branch and it's holding him, and he's hanging over the gorge. And he says, "Dear God, if you get me out of this, I'll dedicate my life to you." And then he hears God say, "Okay, then let go."
Mm.
So anyway,
Yeah.
your faith is such that, and you're developing, and our faith is always developing. And here's the thing: we are either developing our faith, right, or we're losing our faith.
Mm.
There's no status quo in faith.
Mm.
That doesn't exist. So we're either continually working on and growing our faith, building our faith, or we're losing it. And building our faith and growing our faith requires constant effort, reading and meditating and praying and sharing and being in the groups of people, choosing our social groups as those people who will help us grow our faith and not detract from our faith. Those kinds of things. And then I was 30 years, I was in my mid to late 30s, so you're talking 30 years ago. I was kind of like expressing what you're expressing, and that is, where do you want me to go?
Yeah.
Heavenly Father, where am I doing, what? And I was in one of those contemplative periods over time. It's not like it was
Right.
a minute
Yeah.
over time. And then finally I just got down on my knees and I prayed, and I said, I will do my part. I will do my best to live your word. You take me where you want me to go. I can't do this myself. You take me where you want me to go. So we have this covenant, if you will. I will continue to live his word the best I can, and I will follow where he leads me. And once I did that, it seemed like there was a natural direction to where I was career-wise, activities-wise, marriage-wise, faith-wise. It just seemed like, okay, my part is to live your word as fully as I can. My part is to live the commandments. My is to be the most Christ-like individual that I can be. My part is that. The rest of it, please, you drive me where you want me to go. And then kind of as an alternate thing is, some time ago, and at my age, time's kind of relative. It could have been last week. It could have been 2 years ago. I don't know. Some time ago, I was contemplating on the things that I'd done and the person I'd been and that I am. And I was discussing it with myself. And I was trying to find, what's my purpose now? I have all these experiences. I have all these skills. What's my purpose? What am I to be doing? Or why should I continue? More importantly, is why should I continue to do those things? That's the former me. That's the right. Why am I existing for these things? And his voice came to me just as clear as ever. He said, I made you who you are. Do not deny yourself that. I made you who you are for my purposes. And I felt chastised, and I said, okay, I won't act or think, or you keep taking me where you want me to go. I'll keep doing the things I do. I'll keep going to the gym. I'll keep doing the martial arts. I'll keep my shooting skills up. I'll keep my spiritual self activated. I'll keep doing these things that you've led me to, and I believe he did lead me to these things and through these things. And then you show me where to apply them. And I think a lot of it these days is, the one thing we haven't had the opportunity to do is do a class together.
Yeah.
But when I'm teaching firearms, when I'm teaching self-defense, when I'm teaching the skills that I've been graced by God with, and I'm presenting them, this is going to sound funny to some people, but that spirituality comes through that. My spirituality shows through that. Simple things, for instance, and it's just me, right? But I believe that now in my life, because I used to be an example of the other, but I believe now that vulgarity and profanity are the language of the ignorant, and they have no place in our professional discourse. They have no place in our marital discourse. They definitely have no place in our in our teacher and student relationship.
Mm.
They trigger, I don't care how you start. Think I come from law enforcement, I come from the military. You want to talk about places where profanity is an art form, there you go. But I believe they trigger emotional responses and feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Some positive, negative, I don't care, whatever. And I just totally think they're unnecessary. And I think they are indicative of a weakness of character.
Hmm.
So when I first went to Army basic training as a young man, it didn't take me long to figure out when the drill sergeant parked his Smokey Bear hat in the middle of my forehead. Of course, he had to look down to do it. He yelled at me in a very loud voice and called me every name and discredited my heritage, whatever. It didn't take me long, because back in the days that I went to basic training, that's normal.
Mm-hmm.
It was very normal stuff. It didn't take me long, though, to figure out that I didn't like being yelled at, and I did not like being cursed. And it took me a while, a number of years, to learn that lesson. But if I don't like being yelled at and I don't like being cursed, why would I do that to anybody else?
Yeah.
Right? Why would I do that? And I would suggest, and I'm not denigrating anybody, there are lots of great trainers and people who put across great messages and utilize things, but I would opine, right, that if you need to raise your voice and curse to get your point across, the problem is not the individual you're talking to, the problem is you.
Mm.
And I don't think, I know for a fact, because I study the brain. That's part of what I do. I study how we learn. I've got a great deal of education and understanding of how the adult learns. I'm not so great with children, but how the adult learns.
Mm-hmm.
Because my job, Special Forces soldiers, Colonel Greitz, who was, and it's not the Bo Greitz from Vietnam era, Colonel Greitz, who was the 1st Battalion commander of the 1st Special Forces Group way back in the 80s when we were on joint exercise, he said, and it has stuck with me, Special Forces are not just beady-eyed killers. We are trainers of beady-eyed killers. Mm. And Army Green Berets, our world is unconventional warfare. So we go places and we take indigenous forces and we turn them into effective military forces to be utilized. And so we're taught how to train people. Mm-hmm. We're taught how to instruct, how to break complex activities down into appropriate chunks, teach them by chunk, and then place them in order so that a complex task can be accomplished. So we are expert trainers, and they literally have in the Army, at least they did in my days, they literally had trainer courses, and you received a classification of expert trainer in this field or that, those kinds of things, right? And the one thing I know is that yelling and cursing are negative to learning. Mm-hmm. They're not, and so they are detrimental to adult learning processes. Mm-hmm. I don't believe in them. Yeah. But again, I learned that the hard way, because in years earlier, a long time ago, I used to have a very filthy mouth.
Yeah, I was going to say, were you ever one of those guys that did that to other people because that's what you knew?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it got me in trouble a couple of times. And one time it got me in trouble with the person I loved the most. And that day I decided I'm never going to do this again. And I'll tell you what, when you're in the environment, those words, you reach that and you're using those words, it becomes an unconscious act. It's just part. You don't even think about delivering those words. They just come out, and that's a bad place to be. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So training the brain to not use those words took a lot of effort and a long time.
Yeah, I bet it did. And also not to use force or yelling to get your point across. Was that something you had to retrain to?
Yeah. To some degree. So as earlier in my officer career, they assigned me as what's called a TAC officer, Teach, Advise, Counsel, to OCS, Officer Candidate School. Mm-hmm. And they send you to a course, it's called a TTOC course, or Tactical Training Officers course. It's a 6-week course where you learn how to train. And they taught you about where and when it's appropriate, raising voices and what the impact and effect is, and so on and so forth. And I had the and I'm grateful that I had the opportunity to train that course. Because that course, that's 6 weeks of training on how to deliver training, how to write programs of instruction, how to organize training, how to deliver training, which if you're ever in my courses, you'll see that whole process delivered, because it's the most effective way. It's efficient, and it's the most effective way to produce results.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that began my study of the brain and how the brain worked in terms of learning, and I've been doing it ever since. And then we've got these amazing guys out there these days that really know how to put it together, the Dustin Solomons of the world, and the John Holshans, and the people who are able to put that stuff into play. If you want to read a good book on that, read The Talent Code by Daniel Coyle.
I have that book.
Read that book. Read it more than once.
Okay.
Read The Winning Mind.
The Winning Mind.
Get some of the stuff from Brian Willis up in Canada, former SWAT sergeant with Calgary Police Service. He has a company called The Winning Mind.
Okay.
And he's an amazing speaker. He's got amazing products out there, and understanding that, of course, he focuses quite a bit on leadership, how you apply leadership, understanding the mind, and how people receive and then emulate behavior. Albert Schweitzer once said, example is not the main thing in influencing others, it is the only thing. And I believe that to be totally correct. And if you are a trainer, people are looking at you not just for the product you're delivering, but they're looking at you as an example of who they should be.
You're right.
And are you that person? There's a great book by Ron Scheid called Am I That Man? In fact, I think there are 2 volumes. Am I That Man? And that's focused on being the man you want to be, and then how you deliver the man that you want to be so that others may emulate it. Awesome stuff.
I think that's true of fathers and mothers as well.
Absolutely. I not only look like my dad now, I act like him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a great man, though.
Yeah. Wow. That was a wild journey, Randy. Thank you for going on that with me. That was fun.
Yeah, I enjoy these conversations with you, because they're not the normal.
No, they're not the normal. No, I'm not the normal, though. And we should probably call it good there. And I just want to say I always appreciate your openness to me asking anything. And that's one of many reasons why I enjoy having you on the show.
I appreciate all you're doing, and I love following you and the things that you're doing. And I'm anxiously awaiting your transformation as you continue on that journey, because it's awesome.
It is. It's a wild ride, and I'm very, very grateful. Absolutely grateful. And you were part of that journey. You probably don't know that, but some of the things you spoke into me were part of that journey. And as I told you before, there are some things that you said that really stuck with me. And so I'm grateful for that.
I'm grateful for it too.
I do want to plug your websites, though, before we leave, because it's important that people know where to find you. For the Power of Awareness Institute, it's mypoa.org. You can also go to warriorcreed.us and srwinc.us for training. Is that correct?
For training, for consulting, and we do a lot of consulting for businesses to help businesses get better. And then you can find me on Facebook as Randy Watt.
Yeah.
And I think I'm close to the max of friends? But yeah. And I'm on there a lot. I probably talk too much on Facebook, but I'm on there a lot.
I think a lot of people know you. A lot of people love you, and they want to know what you have to say, because you're definitely an influence in the community. And I'm very grateful to know you. And so I appreciate all the extra time you took with me today. And who knows, maybe we'll have you on again. And I can't imagine where that conversation might lead.
We'll have to wait and see, won't we? And I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you, Laura, the opportunity to maybe influence other people and give them some of the same gifts from God that I've received.
Yep, you're doing good work.